Hey, welcome back, friends and neighbors. How are we doing today? Glad you stopped in to see me. I received a little bit of email from a couple of people who, on my last Memorial Day video, had seen me firing the M1 Garand and were actually quite enamored with it. They had seen him, they had had friends and relatives that had him, but they had never shot one. And they really kind of wanted a little deeper dive, I guess you could say, is what they were amounted to. So, going to do a deep dive video on the M1 Garand. Not an absolute complete dissertation on historical data, or we're going to be here for several days. Just going to hit the highlights. According to General George S. Patton, the greatest battle implement ever devised, and for its time, besides the MG-42, yeah, one of the best infantry weapons ever made, and it was used World War II, Korea, some in Vietnam. Final testing and acceptance was in the mid to late 30s, I believe 36. There were a dozen, if not more, different variants that were tested and went through the processing, and the end result that we see modern day in most collections is the battle rifle that was fielded by the United States military in the closing couple of years of World War II, actually. Like I said, there were other variants that came through, but this basic unit right here is the one that was accepted by the U.S. Ordnance Department and fielded for our troops. It fires the 30-06 cartridge, which the U.S. military had an ass load of in surplus stocks. From World War I on forward, the main battle rifle had been Springfield 03A3s and the 1917s. All bolt-action guns, all 30-06 caliber, what they called 30 cal U.S. ball ammunition. And they had such great stockpiles of it. And the reason this rifle is chambered primarily as issued in 30-06 is because that ammunition stockpile was still available. General MacArthur, one of the generals that was in on the decision-making process for the acceptance of this weapon before it was fielded as a U.S. issue piece, turned down and rejected this platform in what was called the 276, I guess a 7mm caliber. And it was a fine caliber, but he didn't want the War Department to have to turn around and retool up and start punching out a bunch of new ammunition for a brand new rifle, when that rifle could fire the 30-06 or the 30 ball just fine and had been chambered in it and tested. So that's the main reason that the M1 Garand came out as an 06. If things had gone a different way, it's quite possible it would have been a 7mm caliber rifle, and probably just as effective, if not more so, and might have had a little bit less of a rainbow shape to its trajectory. Not that 30-06 is by any means ballistically inferior. It's not. It's one hell of a round, and it had served the U.S. for quite some time, decades and decades. So that's why you see them basically in 30-06, and this variant right here, which is actually a Springfield Armory variant. It was rebarreled in 1958 with a Springfield Armory barrel. And for you guys that are into these and know about the data points that we might talk about here in short bursts, the chamber measures 1 and so does the muzzle. Damn fine barrel. People were curious about when I would fire it and he'd hit the end of the 8 rounds and ping, that end block would come ripping out of there. There were some inspectors and commanding officers that really didn't like the fact that it made that ping noise and the Germans would know where to shoot. But I would submit to you this: if you had a couple hundred guys shooting these things at Germans across the way, that little ping probably wasn't getting heard much, and if it was, they already knew where to shoot. So anyway, people were asking kind of about, you know, I've seen people shoot them, I've seen that happen. How do you really function check it? How do you take it apart? How do you clean it? Because One guy asked me, he said, you know, a guy asked me to help him clean his, and we only got about halfway through and then we had to stop. So I'm not going to give this as a dissertation. This is not a technical lesson. I'm just going to do a short demonstration on some things. But really, the U.S. military set this up. This weapon is empty, obviously. That's called saluting the weapon. You've heard of M1 Garand thumb? The follower in here has to be manually depressed to cycle the bolt down. The bolt automatically locks on an empty chamber. Not an empty magazine, an empty chamber, because there's really no magazine, and the magazine is built in. So anytime you open one, it locks back like that. The rear of the heel of your hand goes against the charging handle. Depresses rearward to put the handle under tension. The thumb goes in to depress the follower, and you salute the rifle. And you will never get M1 Garand thumb that way. You try to do it any other way, it's quite possible you will, and it hurts like a son of a bitch. You'll only do it once. Anyway, you have to do this to make sure that the rifle is unloaded and safe, and to facilitate breaking the weapon down. The trigger guard that you saw me just grab and pull, on the modern variants, you just grab it right here at the bottom of the guard and pull forward and up, and your entire fire control group comes out in one piece. Grasp the weapon by the front handguard that covers the top of the barrel. Grasp the weapon by the comb or the grip surface that you would use behind it, and tilt them on opposing axes, and the weapon comes apart, and you can lay this to the side. This exposes your internal workings of your weapon, of its action itself. It exposes the bottom of the bolt, and you'll see it drop down. It exposes the follower, it exposes the operating rod, it exposes the recoil spring and the return guide. It's pretty simple to get apart. All right. Now you can do this at 1 or 2 points. I like to do it beforehand just to get it out of the way. Grasping the stem of the recoil spring guide, pushing it forward, lifting it up, and getting that bad puppy out the way, because don't need it sitting there for you. Now you'll notice this kind of makes everything up there loose, so don't be swinging it around or you might get something kind of lodged up in a point. So at this point, you're going to need something like this little tool that came in the cleaning kit for the Garand. It was actually stored in the butt of the weapon. It had on two ends. One end has a ledge, an ear that sticks out to facilitate stripping the bolt, which we're not going to do today. And the other end is kind of looks like a big, wide, notched end screwdriver tip. It also has a threaded swivel portion for your cleaning rod to go into, because this was the handle for your cleaning rod. It also has a small hole up here in this center stem, and that thing has a purpose for putting a piece of cleaning rod in, so you can take your screwdriver end and loosen your basically gas plug. I've got this up in there, so I better get it down here. That loosens the gas plug at the very front on the end of the gas mechanism. Like I said, what I'm doing is just what's necessary to facilitate getting a good cleaning on this weapon. The plug comes out. Second thing you do is the yoke that it's in becomes loose, and it screws right off the end of the barrel. It just turns on its threads, and it comes off. Okay. Now you have the ability to remove the gas chamber, and it's not really hard to get off there. You usually come off with just a whack from a piece of wood, and there's your gas sensor. Now you can facilitate taking the rest of the weapon down. Okay. Next thing you're going to want to do is remove the operation rod. just do it left-handed. It's easier for me to do right-handed. In the removal of that, okay, your bolt assembly's in there. So all you got to do is just let it kind of fall on this axis while your bolt is right here, fairly close to the rear, and it'll just literally fall off the weapon. Grab the bolt by one of its ears, pull it up, out, and kind of sideways. Well, you little shit. Any other time it would fall out of there. Thank you very much. And basically, you can really spray gunk in there, clean stuff out, give your bolt some good maintenance. You know, I mean, you've really got it as far as you need to take it. There's only a couple other pieces left that can come off of here, and really there's no need to remove them. And it's basically this gate and the mechanism and the follower that's inside the magnet, that's inside the action. And that's really all that is left in there. And you don't have to pull those out, but they do come out fairly easily. There's a pin that you take loose and all this stuff just falls apart. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. And you know, you can clean your barrel, you can clean your action, get really deep into cleaning it, okay? Really not that big a deal, really, if you know the route. You got to know the route. If you try to take it apart any other way, you're not going to be having a good time, okay? And then, obviously, assembly is the reverse order. You know, okay, cut you in there. And it goes all the way to the back. Right on its side. Make sure your follower's down. Move it to about right there. Okay, got your op rod. Now up in here, and I know you can't see it, but right here behind your charging handle is a cam grooved pocket. Make sure you got a little grease in there. It really needs it, okay? Helps the weapon operate correctly. But anyway, you're just going to place that pocket over the lug, the right hand lug on the bolt, okay? Get it in there, bring your stuff down, let it kind of just do its thing. And then there's a small cutout right there. As long as the tang of the operating rod falls down in it, and then the operating rod just moves forward, that's back where it needs to be. Alright, no biggie. Don't get in a hurry on it. This is your front fore end, top fore end piece. You go back in there just like it came off. Get it fit up nicely in its little groove. You got your gas system. Obviously the sight's going to go to the top of the gun. Okay. The end of the op rod, which is also your, essentially your gas piston. Going to go in there. Alright. And just seat it snugly with your hand. You don't got to beat it down on there. It will literally seat snugly with your hand. Because this, the yoke, is going to finish any firm seating that it needs. Because this yoke can only spin just so far, and then it has to come back, and the plug goes in. You got your takedown tool. Recoil spring and its guide. Now you'll notice the guide has a bend in it. The bend goes towards the barrel. It don't go up. If you try to put it in there up, you'll never get it in there up, okay? Go in there when it's up like that. Check here. Put it on its pin. The small pin that sits there on the end of the mechanism of the follower. If it's on there, then it's going to work. If it ain't on there, you're not going to be right. Okay. Go ahead and give this just a little firm hand tight. Doesn't have to be super tight. Got your gas system on, got your barrel shroud on. Okay. Op rod's in, op rod spring guide and spring are in. Bolts in. There's only a couple things left. Same thing. Put them back together. Let them mate up. Fire group assembly, make sure your trigger guard is swung all the way out. Make sure that when you line up the fire group assembly, the forward end of your magazine cover is even with the groove and the well of the magazine right here. And work it into place. You can't force it. There's grooves in the steel that the fire control group ridges right in. So don't try to bang it in. If it doesn't go in by itself, you're not in the right spot. Close and lock the trigger guard. Weapon should remain open. Should be able to salute the weapon, and bang, 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 you have got the greatest battle implement ever devised, ready to go again. This one's got a fine trigger. So now, without further ado, let's tool on out to the range and talk about sighting in and firing this weapon. What do you say? So stand by, let me grab my shit. And by the way, it's summertime now in central Oklahoma, and we just came out of the rainy season, and it's about 101 out there with 95% humidity. So yeah, it's early morning range work for the next couple of months. So stand by, we'll be right out there. And thanks for dropping in. Thanks for sending your comments, the emails, and Brother Billy in Austria, get ready to learn a little more about General Patton's favorite tool of war. Stand by. Remember, salute that gun.